The Pat Campbell Show podcast, presented by Oklahoma Men's Clinic, where you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Guaranteed. Call 918-280-8336 for Oklahoma Men's Clinic.
Friday's debate. I got a number of inquiries over the weekend. Pat, what did you think? Who do you think won? Was there a clear-cut winner? Okay. I'm going to tell you what I saw, and I want to preface all of this by saying what I'm about to say is not an endorsement of any particular candidate. Let me repeat that, because every once in a while we get some low information voters who wander in and they don't quite get what we're doing here. But what I'm about to say about Friday's debate is not, I repeat, is not, one more time, is not an endorsement of any particular candidate. I have not, and I will not, in the primary, endorse a Senate candidate, and I've explained why in the past. Okay, I want to tell you what I saw from my perspective right here in studio. I've also got, let me get to this Facebook post here, because I got one complaint about the debate, and I'll let you figure out who this guy's supporting, okay? PC, it's not a debate when you only want candidates to speak about themselves and not contrast themselves with the other candidates. This was a Q&A session, listen to this, a fluff session, in where candidates are only allowed to prop themselves up rather than show how they are a better choice by showing their opponent's actions compared to their own. I'll let you guess who that guy's endorsing, okay? First of all, the debate, I promised you one thing, that it was going to be intense, and I delivered. I also said it was my job as the host to help you discern the differences. And again, if you go back and you listen, you will see some real glaring differences in all three of these candidates. They're not, as Randy Kriebel over at the newspaper would have you believe, pretty much the same. They're not. There are some distinct differences in those candidates. And if you listen carefully, you'll be able to discern what those differences are. The guy's right in this sense. The first half hour was not a debate in the traditional sense. It was an intense, rapid-fire Q&A from yours truly. Fluff questions, hardly. In fact, all three candidates or people associated with their campaigns admitted to me that this is unlike anything else they've done, and it's going to be unlike anything else that they've done. I am so bored with the traditional debate format. Opening statement, closing statement. Everybody gets the same question, the same old, tired, boring questions. You know, here's something you need to know about me, PC, your humble host. The most awful thing that could happen to me would be to be like everybody else. That, to me, would be death. That's why this program is so radically different. And what was a debate... And I'll get to the debate part, because you'll notice if this guy had listened to the entire thing, there was a segment where there was actual debate, where the candidates were allowed to ask each other questions and also got a rebuttal. So that fits the traditional debate format. So you got everything in a full hour. Right? Now, back to, and by the way, I want to address the thing, too, that this was, a fluff session where candidates are only allowed to prop themselves up rather than contrast themselves with their opponents. Here's the bottom line. If you can't sell me on yourself, maybe you shouldn't be running for office. Let me use the Henry Primo model. Henry Primo pays a lot of money for commercials, and he gets anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. And Henry Primo spends that 30 to 60 seconds of precious time selling you on himself. He doesn't tell you how lousy the Ford dealership down the street is, or the Chevy dealership, or this make or model. He sells you on Kia. He convinces you that you need a Kia. You want a Kia. And so it should be for political candidates too. Now, if I had the luxury of just having two, say for example T.W. Shannon and Langford in here, I would have used a different format, and there would have been rebuttals. But I've got three people in here, and I've got to maximize my time. And everybody knew going in what the rules were. I personally explained it to all three candidates. Now, here's what I saw in studio, okay? Let's start with T.W. Shannon. Up until now, I had been led to believe that T.W. Shannon was an empty suit. Just a good-looking guy, charismatic guy, who's being fed talking points. I'm in studio with these guys. TW Shannon didn't have any notes. He wasn't and I've had candidates in studio before who bring, copious amounts of notes with them. And they're basically reading talking points that they've been fed by their campaigns. TW looked at me, every time I asked him a question, he looked me directly in the eye and gave me a direct answer. A lot of questions were thrown at him first. He had to be quick on his feet. This nonsense that TW is ducking out on debates because, well, he looks good by himself. He looks good with Ted Cruz. He looks good with Sarah Palin and Mike Lee. But when you line him up with the other candidates, he doesn't look so good. I got news for you. Based on what I saw Friday in this studio, that's nonsense. If I was TW Shannon, I would seize every opportunity to be seen, to be heard publicly with my two opponents. Because as I sat in this room looking at these three guys, to me, and again, this is not an endorsement, I'm telling you what I saw, what I heard, what I experienced. TW was clearly the alpha male. This guy's got winner written all over him. And he's assertive. You know, even when he was attacked, he didn't sit by idly. He wanted to jump in, but my format didn't allow for that. TW was clearly the alpha. Langford had some really good points. Randy was not the Randy that I saw in 2010. And I like Randy. I have voted for Randy in the past. When Randy ran against Mary Fallon, Randy never wasted time criticizing Mary Fallon. And there were tons of times to do it. She had a long track record as a congresswoman and as a lieutenant governor. But Randy always took the high road. He never did that. He sold you on Randy. That's part of the reason he was able to get 40%. In the gubernatorial primary, because he sold you on himself. Now, I mentioned that I sent this out to people out of state that don't even know these players. And their assessment of what they heard, what they listened to, was very similar. Here's one. TW won hands down. Clear, forceful, convincing. Langford came across as wonkish and lacking conservative passion. And then Brogdon, they didn't have exactly kind things to say, but they put him in third place. That's what they heard. That's what they listened to. And again, this is not an endorsement for anybody. I'm telling you what I saw, what I witnessed. Now, a couple things. Back to Langford for a minute here. Langford had some really strong points when it came to the debt ceiling, because it's real easy to say, well, I won't vote for raising the debt ceiling, as both TW and Randy did. But the reality is that's seldom voted on alone. And then he starts asking questions, well, where are we gonna cut so that we don't have to do that? Those are the tough decisions that have to be made. One of the areas where Langford hurt himself, however, is, and TW never responded to this, and again, I don't know that the format actually lent itself to do so towards the end. But Langford revealed what was a private, personal conversation where apparently TW had promised him that if he ran for the Senate, he wouldn't run for the Senate. In other words, TW wouldn't run for the Senate. And I don't know if that's true or not. I never found out from TW, okay? But I was bothered, and apparently several of you were bothered too, because you sent me emails. You were bothered that Langford would take this opportunity to reveal what was otherwise a private, personal conversation to score points with voters. And again, this is not an endorsement of any of the candidates. I'm telling you what I saw, what I witnessed in studio. And this idea that TW is somehow an empty suit that's being fed talking points. He wasn't reading off notes. He had everything in his head. He was quick. So was Langford. Randy had his good moments too. But if I was TW, I'd want to be seen with my two opponents as much as possible, heard as much as possible. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. What is it? June 24th, I think, is the primary date. All right, back to the debate for a minute here, too, because I just heard a Langford commercial. A couple of other observations in studio here. Let me talk about Langford first. And I study people. I watch people. I'm an observer. Okay? What I really dug about Langford is Langford never got rattled. He was calm, cool, and collected at all times. Now, that is what do I want to call it? Not a quality, but a trait that I admire. You know who's got that? Dr. Everett Piper from Oklahoma Wesleyan University. He never gets rattled. He never lets his temper get the better of him. He never gets thrown off his game. He always addresses things with logic and right reason. I see that in Langford. That is a quality that one would look for in a leader. Now, T.W. Shannon, on the other hand, he's not going to be bullied. He would not sit there silently when Randy said something. He says that's not true. And that's another thing you need. You need a fighter. You need somebody who's not going to be pushed around, somebody who's going to stand up, and somebody who's going to assert themselves.